Гледате неделно интервју на Радио Слободна Европа. Наш денешен гостин е амбасадорот на Кралството Холандија во земјава, господинот Дирк Јан Коп. Амбасадоре, внесувањето на бугарите во Уставот е услов за одржување на втората меѓувладина конференција и за официјален почеток на преговорите на Северна Македонија со Европската Унија. Меѓутоа, во последно време, барем реториката која што ја слушаме од двете страни, не влева надеж дека работите одат на подобро. Дали во вакви услови промената на Уставот, на преамбулата, е гаранција дека навистина ќе почнат да се отвараат, ако ги усвоиме, дека ќе се отвараат поглавијата на Северна Македонија со Европската Унија?
Well, the first phase of the negotiations has started in July last year. The screening process is well underway under the guidance of Vice Prime Minister Maricic, and that will make very clear, that screening process, what considerable achievements North Macedonia has already made and what still needs to be done. That is useful, but of course, in fact, North Macedonia already knows what still has to be done. The second phase will start the moment North Macedonia has included, has changed the preamble of the constitution to include the Bulgarian minority along with the 7 ethnic groups that are already mentioned in the constitution. The council conclusions of July last year state clearly that as soon as North Macedonia adopts this change, the second phase will start immediately and without a further political decision. So, yes, inclusion or changing the preamble of the constitution guarantees the start of the new phase. It's automatic.
Да, но токму за тие уставни промени немаме консензус, барем во однос на политичките партии во земјава. Во меѓувреме се формираше и работна група која што ќе работи на уставните измени, а во неа своји представници нема најголемата опозицијска партија. Како гледате на тој потек на опозицијата?
If you listen to Vemero, you notice that also that party has no problem whatsoever with the content of this deal. So what is it? What is it that makes them hold out? It is not, it has nothing to do with Bulgaria. Some of people in Vemero say they will negotiate a better deal. That's nonsense. There is no better deal than this. This is absolutely the best deal North Macedonia could get. So what is happening is that, in my view, Vemero is risking postponing EU membership again for 3-4 years at least, and that is, I don't think, a very good way to go, and it is also would be very regrettable if that happens. This is the moment.
Амбасадоре, како гледа Холандија на заканите од Бугарија за ново вето за Северна Македонија?
There is no new veto. If the preamble of the constitution is changed, then the second phase of the negotiations is automatic. So there can be no veto there. Also, it is not that important. The country should do its reforms, and that is the only way to get into the union. And there is the screening process will make clear what these reforms should be, and that is much more important than the position of Bulgaria in the end. But it is threatening to become another fig leaf, another excuse for not doing the reforms. It draws the attention away from things that really should matter. And Bulgaria, we consider to be a relatively minor bilateral issue.
Може ли употребата на европското знаме за законите кои што се поврзани со коридорите 8 и 10, со изградбата на коридорите 8 и 10, да предизвика натамошни последици во однос на евроинтегративниот пат на нашата земја?
I think so. EU legislation is pretty clear. You can ignore rules for state procurement, which means avoid tendering a contract. These conditions there are two. One is national security. When you have tanks at your border, you don't have to shop around for the best deal to buy guns. And the other one is a national emergency, a natural disaster. Let's say if you have a major earthquake, you don't have to shop around for the best deal to get blood plasma. You need it immediately, and you can buy it immediately. So EU legislation is clear, and the Bechtel-Enka deal does not fit that description. So it is not in line with EU legislation. And also the whole manner in which it came about is pretty intransparent, which is also the opinion of the IMF, for instance. So can North Macedonia do this? Well, a natural disaster, it could be only if you describe the state of the infrastructure as a natural disaster, but I don't think anybody is doing that. Can North Macedonia do that? Yes, it can, but it can only do this because it is not a member of the European Union. Following courses like this become a problem when you want to be in the Union? I would say that is the question.
Борбата против корупцијата останува една од слабите точки, барем според извештаите на релевантни меѓународни организации. Како владата се справува со овој проблем?
Well, we don't see much improvement, and on the contrary, we think things are getting worse. There is corruption everywhere, vested interest, undue political influence, nepotism, clientelism, and the recommendations of, let's say, the State Anti-Corruption Committee, the State Audit Committee, the Ombudsman are simply not followed up, and by anybody, not the government, not the parliament, not the prosecution. In fact, the anti-corruption report for this year shows that only 10% of the recommendations have been followed up. That is very little. It's even a smaller number than the 20% in the 2021 report. A report, by the way, that still has not been reviewed by Parliament in the last 2 years, as it should have done.
Амбасадоре Коп, довербата на граѓаните во правосудниот систем е исто така на едно многу ниско ниво. Разрешувањата во судскиот совет, настаните кои што се случуваа во судскиот совет, враќањето на повторно судење на високопрофилни случаи и така натаму се последните во низата настани кои што направија да има една таква перцепција во правосудниот систем. Како вие гледате на судството и кои се проблемите со кои што се соочува?
In the last 2 years we thought we saw improvement. And a better mentality, independent appointment of judges in the courts. But also there now we see things getting worse again. We see signs of political influence on the election of the Special Prosecutor for Organized Crime. We see signs of political influence in the selection of candidates for the Judicial Academy. We see signs of political influence in all the courts, practically. Yes, and that is very worrying, and it is piling up. It is one thing after the other. And I may remind you of the fact that in February 2020, when the Parliament in its last session adopted laws that guaranteed the prosecution of SPO cases, the wiretapping cases, that single event made it possible for my country to agree to membership of North Macedonia, which then the Council agreed to a month later in March 2020. That is still the case. It's a central issue, and we are following it closely. And it is part of the first cluster of fundamentals, the cluster that is now opened first and will be closed last. And it will remain of high importance. It's not gone away, but instead what we see is that case after case of these SPO cases get bogged down in the courts. It is a very, very bad development. And then now we have the Judicial Council, which in fact has become an illegitimate body. That is of extraordinary seriousness. That is really painful to watch. And it has led to the quite unprecedented step as a result of that the Netherlands has now put on hold a large project we were doing with the Judicial Council, very serious.
Амбасадоре, последниот пат кога разговаравте, рековте дека не треба да се откажуваме од патот кон ЕУ и дека пречките треба да ги надминеме и да продолжиме напред. 2 години подоцна, податоците покажуваат зголемен евроскептицизам во државата и покажуваат дека граѓаните практично не се имуни ниту на неправда, ниту на пречките на патот кон ЕУ. Кој би бил вашиот коментар?
Let's talk about popularity. Recent polls show that the most popular politician in this country is Vladimir Putin, a man who causes death and suffering and maiming of thousands, tens of thousands of Ukrainian men, women and children. The most popular politician in North Macedonia. Interesting question. Why? Why? And I think the answer to that is that the more you paint the EU black, apparently the more the popularity of persons like Putin can increase. So what is happening here? I think all politicians, the establishment, echoed by lots of the media, a large part of the NGOs, now blame the European Union for everything. And that is very strange, because after decades of massive support, the necessary reforms could have been implemented years ago. But instead, what we hear more and more is the EU is to blame, and why is the EU making us wait so long? And I think, in fact, that this country is making us wait too long. It could have done all this a long time ago, but instead everybody is told the fairy tale that somehow we are making North Macedonia wait. We don't.
Северна Македонија и Холандија годинава одбележуваат 30 години од воспоставувањето на дипломатските односи. Амбасадоре, која е вашата оценка за билатералните односи меѓу двете земји? Има ли простор за продлабочување на истата?
In the past 30 years of our diplomatic relationship, a lot has changed. But one thing has remained the same. The Netherlands continues to be one of your biggest and loyal friends and supporters. And that is why the logo of our 30 years diplomatic relations is we shine together. And we do.
Амбасадоре Коп, ви благодарам што бевте гостин во неделното интервју на Радио Слободна Европа.
Thank you.
Вам, почитувани, ви благодарам за вниманието. Довидување за една недела.